Today I'm chatting with author, teacher, and technical communicator Matthew Helmke. So we'll talk about some of the things he's done and what you can learn from it. So, Matthew,
Thank
do
you.
you want to talk a little bit about yourself or just jump into how you got into technical communication?
Yeah, why don't I just jump in? We'll figure out things about me as we go on, I'm sure.
Mhm.
How did I get into technical communication? By accident, really?
So that's one of the two major paths.
So I started out as kind of a technical person doing stuff, honestly, because I found it fun. I was playing a lot with Linux. I was doing some programming. I was messing around with stuff. And I had this habit of, you know what? I'm not going to remember this tomorrow. I'm going to take some notes. I'm going to need these notes next week or next month or next year. And so I would just write stuff down. And then Ubuntu came out, and this is 2005. So it was the second release of Ubuntu. And I got involved in the community there. And like I said, I was taking notes on stuff, and then someone would say, "Hey, how do you do this?" And I'd say, "Oh, I've done that." And I'd, write up a little forum post or whatever. And people started using them. And I thought,
Nice.
oh no, I'm not really an expert, am I? But people would tell me, "Oh, you missed a step or this or that. Here's a way to improve this." Oh, fantastic. And I do it. And next thing I know, someone comes to me and says, "Oh, the official Ubuntu book is coming out with the second edition. And we'd love to include something about what you're doing with the
Fun.
Ubuntu forums and the community and all of that. You want to write a chapter? Sure, why not? How hard could it be, right?"
Famous last words.
If I only knew, right? It was definitely more work than I anticipated. So going through life in the tech world, you get used to people reviewing your stuff, right? And it's always just, you feel a little bit vulnerable.
Mhm.
But it seemed like writing in that sort of setting, I felt even more vulnerable. First of all, it was my first real time, right? But then secondly, I was putting myself out there in ways I never had.
Mhm.
And I was getting copy editor reviews, and I was getting tech editor reviews. And I was feeling like, oh man, I'm horrible. I'm awful. Look at all these things they need fixed. Over time, you start to realize, no, they're actually just helping you be the best you can.
Mhm.
And you learn to let go of all that. But that was kind of the beginning. That came out. It was successful. I had a couple books about Morocco come out because I had lived there for a while. Well, actually, those were my first books, but that wasn't tech writing.
How is writing the books about Morocco different than the books about Ubuntu?
That's a great question. So I published them myself.
So you
So
didn't
that was
have
a
to deal
huge
with
part of it.
the other editors and pleasing other people.
Right. I mean, I invited people to come edit them, but they weren't professional editors either.
Mhm.
So, and the reason I did that is I published two books on very niche topics. I was running language school at the time, and I was thinking of my students who could learn the language from a book, but couldn't sit in a cafe and hear someone tell a joke and know why it was funny,
Hmm. Okay.
or even understand the joke. They could understand every word, but go, I don't know what's going on here. And then the second book was about supernatural events and
Mhm.
perspectives. It was, you're living in a culture where people believe these things. And whether you believe them or not, out of respect, you should take people at face value that they believe this. Don't laugh at them. Don't scoff. Don't, just listen and interact. You get into a taxi and you tell the guy where you want to go, and he goes, God willing. Don't say, no, not God willing. I'm willing. Take me there.
Oh, Jesus. Yes, please.
you
Don't,
know,
don't.
just it's okay to say God willing along with them and know that it's a cultural thing, and you
Yeah,
don't have to, believe anything to be nice to people.
absolutely.
You
Cultural
know,
respect. I mean, that is a fantastic viewpoint.
you can find both my books on archive.org
Mhm.
and read them for free if you want to.
Awesome.
Both
Link will be
those
in the description,
Morocco
guys.
books. Awesome. Yeah, check them out. So I had written those, I had published those. I had an intended audience of these students trying to make a home in a new culture in a new country and not being successful yet. So I was filling some gaps for them. So I had a little bit of a history. Plus, as an educator, I have a history of breaking down complex topics into small, hopefully atomic bits,
Mm-hmm.
and explaining those bits as clearly as possible, and hopefully building one upon the other to make this beautiful construction of whatever it needs to be. And so I got to tech accidentally because I was playing with it, but I was already doing the let's take this problem and figure it out and present it in a way that, first of all, I'll understand it later, but also other people might benefit. And I think that just it's an unusual skill in the tech world. It's a very common skill among teachers and educators. It's a common skill among anyone that is going to present information, hopefully, to an educated audience in certain venues. But in tech, you get a lot of step skipping, a lot of
Yes.
assumption. Okay, so you're starting here and you know this, so why don't you just go from there? No, I don't know that. What is that?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a huge part of falling into tech comms was a willingness to say so and not be embarrassed by raising my hand and saying, wait, I don't know something. I have a gap. I need to fill my gap. And then maybe I'll write it down so other people who have the same gap don't have to ask. And you end up being a user advocate.
Yeah, definitely. Because you have that empathy, because you're thinking about like who else is going to have this pain, this problem, and how can I help them? How can I help
Right.
them deal with the problem faster and more easily than I did?
Exactly. Exactly.
So
As
how
I
did
think about it, there was also a programming aspect because I was doing techie programming things, right?
Mhm.
I was writing stuff in various languages, and some languages, say Python, there's pretty much one way to write things. And if you sit down in front of the code, it's more obvious than in most programming languages what's going to happen, what's going on, what's happening to this data that's flowing through this algorithm. And then there are other languages like, I don't know, Perl, where it just looks like a cat walked across the keyboard. And if you don't take notes,
Jesus. Yeah.
legitimately, if you don't take notes, you're not going to know what you did or why, and you're going to rewrite it from scratch, which is a colossal waste of time. So I would just write down, this is what's happening. This is what each of these variables mean. This is what this little thing over here does. And it almost seems pedantic
Hmm.
early on. But when you go back and you're that guy who has to maintain the code 6 months later, or even a
Oh,
week later in some cases, you take a deep breath and go, oh man, I love whoever wrote this. Oh God, that was me.
yeah. Future you will thank you is one of my go-to phrases for dealing with SMEs. We're like, oh, we don't need to write that down. People just look at the code, or we'll remember that. No, no, no. Future you will thank you for this. Trust me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're in sync on that.
Yeah, so that's how you got into technical writing. How did you get into the technical content, the more markety side of things?
Yeah. So, again, by accident, let's see, where did I do that? That was at Gremlin. And before Gremlin was Red Hat. I was at Red Hat. I was a technical writer. I was also doing blog posting. This was back in the blog era where that was a really common thing. I still have a blog. It hasn't been updated in like 2 years. And I think it's one post from that year. So, that kind of died off. But at the time, I was finding little novel things that I was doing.
One
Oh,
second.
yeah,
Hey, hey, word nerds, if you guys want Matthew to start updating his blog again and want a link to that, then leave us some comments and I will pass them along. Let him know that he is being harassed to update his blog.
yeah, yeah. It's at matthewhelmke.com. So you can read
Okay.
what's there and you can see that, there's a lot of techie stuff. And then I wrote a short story and published it on there because I
Oh,
wanted
fun.
to. There are a lot of book reviews because I used to talk to publishers and convince them to send me free books.
That's a talent.
And the only catch was we need you to post a review somewhere.
Hmm.
Well, hey, I have this blog. That'll work. So, I would post it
Nice.
there. I would post on Amazon for them too. Just, it wasn't the requirement, but why not? And then somebody from this little startup saw some of the things I had done and through a recruiter contacted me
Hmm.
and said, would you ever consider? And I said, I would consider lots of things. What are the terms? And so they said, well, we need someone in marketing, but we need someone who's technical enough to speak to engineers with marketing materials. So we need someone who could write a white paper. We need someone who could write blog posts. We need someone who could write these things. And I said, well, I could write anything. And if I don't know how, I could figure it out because I could go find some resources and learn from other people. So I'm going to take the jump and say, yes. So what do you want to give me? And they said something that astonished me. And I said, okay, let's give it a shot. And so that, again, accident on my side, but not on someone else's side.
Yeah, life lesson, kids. If somebody gives you a salary offer that astonishes you, show no surprise. Just say, yes, thank you.
Yeah, you know what? That'll work. If you give me $5,000 a year more, I think I could sign today.
There we go.
I have said that successfully more than once.
Nice. Yeah, negotiation tips. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what do you consider the difference between technical writing, like documentation, and technical content writing?
So I look at technical content as something that's a little broader. Technical writing, in terms of documentation, is a very specific field. It has certain style guidelines. It has certain parameters. You are speaking directly to the person and giving them instructions. You might give some contextual knowledge. Here's why you care about this thing I'm about to tell you. Here's the thing you do. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Step 5, here's this other little side note that you need to remember. Warning, danger, whatever. And then at the bottom, I'll add, here's some links to other resources. Here's some ways that you can expand on the knowledge you just gained. But I don't want to waste anyone's time. With documentation, I want to be direct, start to finish, sit down, put my hands on a keyboard, do a task, walk away happy. That's my goal for the reader. And for technical content, you have a little more leeway. Your goal is to guide the reader on a journey. And it's not necessarily a start to finish journey. Sometimes it's a little bit of an emotional journey. Here's this big picture problem that you have. And here's how this little niche product that our company produces addresses that problem. Not in the here's your procedural steps, but in the here are the areas we can touch within your context and make your life easier. And so it's not the fluffy, all new, brand spanking, whatever, bunnies hopping, birds chirping, everything's happy, right? It's, I see a need and I see a specific person at a company who would love to know more about how to meet that need. And they don't want to go read documentation to figure it out. They need an introduction of some sort, but an introduction that is more than just the typically drier 2-paragraph introduction at the beginning of a documentation set.
Yeah, so it sounds like technical documentation is like a journey from beginning to end, point A to point B, and technical content is more of an emotional journey, kind of.
Yeah. And I would even say it's kind of an attempt to woo. Your goal is not to scare someone into anything or push them or make them feel like their life's falling apart. Sometimes marketing will try and do that. Nothing I've ever written has. But it's more kind of that illumination of opportunity. You could have this. And this is a much more golden path than the one you're taking right now. Look how much easier it is. Look how we took out these rocks. Wouldn't it be amazing if...
You once told me technical content's goal was to entice and enthuse. And that has just stuck with me for years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you think of documentation, you think of specific formats, right? You think of online documentation, it has this style. Book documentation has that style. White papers, I would still put closer to the documentation side, but there's a marketing aspect of those that is kind of a crossover. But when you get to the technical content development, you are entice and woo, right? just draw people in gently. You're kind of thinking of a specific person when you're writing. Now, as writers, we all do that, right? We write our documentation for specific people, but maybe it's a little broader, because with technical content, you're going to sit down and you're going to think, okay, how do I make this appeal to a CTO and to an engineering manager who maybe hasn't put their hands on a keyboard with code in 5, 10 years, and to an engineer who is elbow deep in a code base right now and has a specific need and problem that we can solve. And so you're going to figure out, how do I put things in there that appeal to each of these people without being boldface?
Yeah, and that's so fascinating because when I'm writing documentation, I'm trying to be useful to the widest number of people in my audience. You know, the junior engineer who just started using the software yesterday to the advanced engineer who really just needs to, you know, find the particular API endpoint. But I'm not necessarily trying to appeal. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different kind of emotional connection. I mean, lack of emotion, really.
For sure. For sure. Now, I discovered I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to do it forever.
Fair.
And what happened at the next job? So we worked at Grafana together, and that's
Yes.
where I was doing technical content development. But right around the time you left, I got approached by one of the VPs at the company who said, "Hey, we're thinking of starting a customer education program here.
Oh, I
And
remember that.
you've
I think
taught
that
at the
was a little
university."
bit before I left. And I
Yeah,
remember Grafana University, wasn't it?
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was so cool.
It was a lot of fun. It was a stretch at first. And within, I don't know, 6 months, I felt like I got the hang of it.
Hmm.
And we were producing some really beautiful, useful online coursework that customers were liking, and sales, especially post sales, really appreciated, because it made onboarding so much easier. They didn't have to do one-off trainings for every company and figure out, the coordination. Oh man, this company has 50 people that are going to access this. How are we going to do that? Well, put them in front of this video. I won't go into how that failed, but it did fail. I think the primary reason was there was an expectation that was never communicated, and we were creating something that was not understood. People who used it understood it. People who were at like a certain level in the company didn't. And unfortunately, it went all the way up to that VP. Our whole crew was let go at the same time.
Oh,
But I landed another gig doing the same thing somewhere else, had a fantastic time doing it, and was very happy, very successful. And then I thought, you know what? I'm ready to go back to writing documentation.
you told me at one point you were doing marketing. How did that happen?
Yes. Yeah. So that was at Gremlin. That was before we were at Grafana. That was the one where they just called me up
Hmm.
and said, we're looking for a technical person and they need to know about these things. Well, it happened to be things that I had worked on in the past
Hmm.
with various companies. So I had the right buzzwords in my online resume, and they found me in a search that way. But then I was able in an interview to talk intelligently about the things they wanted to talk about. And they said, okay, you can write. We've seen samples. You can speak coherently about the technical topics that we need to have explained to people. Let's talk about salary and expectations.
So, do you consider technical content as part of marketing, or is there like a level of marketing past that? You kind of implied that earlier.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit different from marketing, but not so much that I would call them completely separate.
Hmm.
The goal in marketing is always to draw attention to something. Hey, look at this stuff. We want you to buy it. Here's why. Technical content kind of straddles that bridge between the dry documentation, because I did write some of that at
Hmm.
Grafana. And the reason I did it was because the product I was hired to do content for didn't have great documentation. It was okay, but
Yep.
I thought I can't draw customers to this until the documentation meets a certain standard. And it was fun. I enjoy, grabbing a pile of stuff
Hmm.
that needs organization and organizing it. So I organized it. I rewrote a bunch of it. I didn't rewrite all of it. Most of it was decent. It just wasn't complete, and it was written by engineers, and you could tell. Um,
Yes. Yes, you can.
so, I got all that fixed. And then I started writing blog posts and doing podcasts. And I even did some presentations. And being a technical content creator, but also a communicator in multiple ways, multiple media.
Mhm.
And I think that's maybe the most unique bit about being in that technical content development niche is that you have to be flexible enough to do multiple kinds of content. So you have to get comfortable. I had to get comfortable again with videos. I'd done videos.
Mhm.
Frankly, I hate doing videos because you spend a ton of time on it and one thing changes and now you have 20 hours of work to go make a new
Oh,
video or
yeah.
fix whatever you've done. So I find it a colossal waste of employer money to put me in charge of that. Other people can do it faster and better than I can. I could write the script for a video very well. I could tell you exactly what should be shown, how it should be shown. I just don't want to sit in front of the mixer and do all the graphics and grab the video files and figure out all the transforms and no, thank you.
Yeah, on my other YouTube channel, which I'm currently editing a video where I'm mending a t-shirt. And oh my gosh, I'm learning so much about zooming and repositioning stuff with that. So I completely understand this YouTube journey has been such an education for me.
I bet.
Oh, so aside from being flexible, do you have any advice that you would give to new technical writers or any stories you want to tell?
Let me start with advice. Find opportunities to write. It doesn't have to be for money. Start a blog. Write things that you own, do them well, and enable yourself to have a portfolio. You can create a portfolio that doesn't have any relationship to any job that you've ever had. Or you could go find an open source project.
I hear that advice all the time, and a while back I actually tried to get involved with open source, but the thing is that it's really harder than you think unless you're a very
Mm,
technical person and can
that's
really
fair.
kind of self-serve. A lot of open source projects just don't seem to have the interest in providing the kind of support that a non-engineer, non-developer technical writer needs. And
That
that
is fair. That's
that's
a
tough.
really good thing to note because I was speaking from that person who I've used Git forever,
Hmm.
right? My favorite writing platform is a plain text editor. I'd rather mark it up myself than not really understand what this, really pretty Google Doc or whatever is doing behind the scenes. The old joke was Microsoft Word. You would lay something out and you'd put a pretty picture right in the middle of text,
Yeah.
and then you'd add a period somewhere because it was missing. And all of a sudden, the picture was a page and a half down.
Oh yeah. This is why we use
And
Word.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's the extreme case. But I do like the control that comes from having everything visible when you're writing.
Yeah, I like your suggestion about the blog though, because that's really accessible to everyone. And if you're a new writer going kind of on the technical journey, especially trying to uplevel your own skill, then you
Mhm.
can kind of document that for a while. I was going through Try Hack Me rooms and posting about that on LinkedIn, kind of posting my thoughts. And someone
Yeah,
called that learning in public. That could be, a basis for a blog entirely.
absolutely. I think people miss the fact that one of the most important aspects of any good technical writer is curiosity.
Yeah, I actually have a video about traits of good technical writers, and I believe that was the third one after good writing skills and some technical aptitude.
Excellent. Yeah, because you have to be willing to do something that you haven't done before and then ask why
Hmm.
or how
That
or what?
that comes up a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that will serve anyone who's a young new technical writer looking for something to write about. That was also why I wrote a lot of book reviews. there was a self-serving aspect of, hey, free books, and these are things I wanted to learn. But there was also the aspect of, this forces me to sit down and write something, even if it's not the type of thing I want to write for the rest of my career. I'm writing something, I'm publishing something. It's, for a while, it was fairly frequent. I often had a stack this high of multiple tech books and other kinds of books. I reviewed every title in a manga educational series
I did.
at one point.
I have never heard that phrase before, but that's delightful. Manga.
Yeah, it was called the Manga Guide 2. And there was the Manga Guide to Calculus, the Manga Guide to Physics, the Manga Guide to Databases. There was this whole series. And it was actually brilliantly done.
Yeah, it just kind of blew my mind there a little bit.
It forced me also to read about things that I didn't know, because I didn't always get to choose the titles. I got to choose whether or not they would send me a specific title, but not what title was available, at least not at first. For a while, I had several publishers where I could just look at their website and go, hey, you have a new release coming out. It's on this topic. Can you send me one? Sure. But having that kind of motivation, self-motivation to learn something new and then write about it, is a great way for a young technical writer, someone who's early in their career or maybe hasn't even started yet, to get some practice. What you can do is you can look for a technology that's sitting on your machine. Oh, hey, I like to use this program. I didn't know how to do this. Now I can tell someone else how to do this. It could be as simple as how to take a screenshot. If you do that, you can talk for 1 to 3 sentences about why screenshots matter. You could write a little procedure about screenshots, and you could give some links to various places where people could learn more reference material.
Yeah, maybe give examples of good and bad screenshots and explain why. I mean,
Absolutely.
There's a lot you can get into there. I think that people undervalue their own expertise. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
we're sitting here talking on a video call, which means one of us had to set it up. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
into a mic, which means that you set up that peripheral and made it work. So if you're watching this, think about just what you do, because to somebody else, that is just black magic that is impenetrable. And so see if you can explain it to them.
Absolutely. You do not have to start with what is Kubernetes and why do I care about large scale distributed systems with automation. I like that kind of stuff. I've written about that stuff for almost a decade, but you don't have to start with that level of complexity and that level of pushing the edge and the boundaries of technology. You can start with something everybody knows, but just show how well you write.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stereotypical example for a lot of years, technical writing tests, I'm sure you've had to take some to
Yes.
get jobs. I think most of them are stupid,
They're
but
all
my personal, most amusing one that everybody did for a couple years was teach me how to make a peanut butter sandwich or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
oh my God. I never
Okay.
had to do that one. Usually, most lately, I've been having companies very obviously trying to get free work out of me.
Yeah. Last time I was searching, I had some companies do that, and I said, "Here's my rate if you want me to produce something." I had one pay it, and the
Nice.
others I just decided I didn't want to work there. And it was explained to an alien how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So you'd have to go from, they don't know necessarily what bread is. How deep do I want to go into that? Do they know what peanuts are and how you make peanut butter? Does it matter?
Should you put a warning that some people might be allergic to gluten or peanuts? Check your users before you serve it to them.
And I think it's not that there's a right way to
Mhm.
write that documentation or a wrong way. There are just aspects that some people are going to gravitate towards and other people will gravitate other ways. And it's figuring out, is this complete enough where a novice could sit down and be successful? Does it include enough information? Does it include so much information that they would get overwhelmed and quit? And what does the balance feel like in this document? I think it's not an amazing test, but I think it's a valid test when given well.
Yeah, that would actually have been an interesting one. The tests I've been given were a lot drier.
I will close with, I love all forms of technical communication. I have worked doing most of them. I've written everything from blog posts to books to white papers to entire websites, marketing websites that are still in use 7, 8 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And then tons of professional technical documentation intended for audiences like engineers. I've done coursework. One of the first things I did at my current job was the VP of engineering and I used to work together at a different place. And he said, look, I'm hiring a ton of new engineers and we have this task where they have to make these things. It's how to make container images, but doing it the chain guard way. He said, I need somebody to teach them how to do that. And I don't have anybody on the writing staff who technically could come up to speed quickly or on the technical staff who could learn how to write quickly. I've read your stuff before. He had my book on the shelf behind him as we're talking
Nice.
about this and said, could you do it? And I said, yeah, I could do it. And every engineer that joins our company has to take my class. I was not hired as an instructional designer, but I can do it. And I think that flexibility is something you want to cultivate in your career. Stretch yourself. Don't take a job where you can do all of the things they need. Take a job where you can do 70% of it and talk about how you are going to do that other 30%, how you're going to learn it, how you're going to stretch yourself, and why you want to.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that and so much for your time, Matthew. It's an absolute pleasure having you here on Technical Writing Uncensored. And folks,
It's been my privilege.
Folks, if you feel you got value from this video, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. See you next time on Technical Writing Uncensored. Have a good one, Matthew.
You too. Bye.